I know a lot of you are currently taking an AP class, and so today I'm going to give you a few tips on how to do well on the AP exam and hopefully get a 5. The best thing to do while you're taking an AP class is to use everything that the teacher gives you during the course. So for example, in AP Psychology, my teacher gave us reading guides, meaning for each chapter, he'd give us like prompt questions that we would go over while reading the chapter, or we would get a study guide for big exams with all of the topics covered and practice questions when it got closer to the AP exam. So things like this are usually super helpful because your teacher has most likely taught the course before and understands what's expected of you during the exam. So utilizing these is really useful while you're studying. Although using teacher resources is really useful and you should always do that, make sure that that's not the only thing you're relying on. So using your textbook is super important. For AP Psychology, I outlined every single one of the chapters in my book. So by the end of the year, when it's time to go back and study through all of the topics, I had the entire textbook laid out in only a couple of pages, which is super useful and is really easy to study because you don't have to read through all of the fluff that the textbook goes through. Instead, you can go right through the main points and you end up remembering it better because you've created the notes yourself and not just read it in someone else's words. So before each of my chapter tests throughout the year in AP Psychology, I always made my own study materials right before each test. So this was super useful for me because that way at the end of the year, right before the AP exam, I was able to pull out everything that I made for each chapter, and that way I had a really summarized version of the chapters and not had to go back into all of my lecture notes or even look back in the textbook because that takes up a lot more time, and this way I have already studied during the year and I have my materials for a second part of the year. So I do this in a few different ways. I make mind maps, and these are really useful for like visually linking ideas and information, and I'll link a video on how I use this method up above and in the description box if you guys want to know more about this. And I also make summary foldables. So a lot of you know this as my alternative to flashcards, and this is a really easy, quick, and like environmentally friendly way of memorizing a lot of vocabulary, and this is super useful, especially in a class where you need to remember a lot of different terms. And so having a lot of these per chapter really helps me closer to the AP exam because I'm able to gather all of my materials in one place. One of the best ways to succeed on the AP exam is to get a prep book. So usually I like to use either the Barron's test guides or the Princeton reviews, and both of them seem to work pretty well for me and I really enjoy using them. So inside you can find really great resources, like it gives you summaries of each chapter, gives you like a more watered down version of what you go over in class, so that way you really understand the key points. And at the end of each section, it has a set of practice questions that are in the AP style, so that way you can get used to the multiple choice and understand where your weaknesses are as far as the entire book goes. And so this is a really great resource to have just because it has everything in a book rather than looking in your really big textbook. You can look in the smaller book, that way it's just so much easier to have because it's geared towards the AP exam itself. It gives you tips on like answering free response questions, how the rubric is going to look for essays, things like that. And at the end there are 2 practice tests in this case, and so this is a really great way to gauge how well you will do in the exam, just because you're able to sit through the whole thing, see where the focuses are, and so this is just the best way to study in my opinion because you're able to understand what's exactly expected of you, and it gives you answers with explanations as to why that one's the best answer. And so I think that once I started using this book in about April, I ended up really feeling confident that I would do well in the exam. Thanks for watching. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel because I'll be posting new videos every Wednesday, and please be sure to check out my Tumblr and 8 tracks. Bye guys!